So, thanks everyone for joining. It was cool to see so many people were interested in this topic. I'm going to call it the AM PM showdown, but it's not really, right? Like, there's just tension. Anyway, I'm Brett. Today, we're going to get into probably one of the most persistent and poorly handled tensions in agency life, and that's the account management, project management divide. Sometimes it's messy, sometimes it's invisible, and sometimes it burns out really good people. So today we're going to break it open, why it matters, where it works, where it doesn't work, and what you can actually do to build teams that don't just survive, but actually thrive. So Carl mentioned a little about me. Here's a little bit more. I live and work in New Jersey. I'm in my home office. As you can tell, I love music, love getting outdoors. Ask me about my hiking and traveling adventures. I like to say that I work so that I can travel. Professionally, this is important. Like my background is project management, but I started my career as a writer and producer at a startup. I've worked on the web, writing and managing since I graduated college in the late 90s. My first real project management role was at an agency called Razorfish in the early 2000s. Before that, I was an account director in a smaller branding agency. So I've done all the jobs. And if you know about my book, you know that I really lean on the people side of project management. So I'm no longer a PM, but I'm a consultant and a coach, and I help agencies to kind of shape up their shops. As a part of that work, I'm also a fractional head of operations for a studio called Image Conscious Studios, and I've actually helped them to redefine project management and to define account management, which is why this
Incredible.
topic was really exciting for
Yeah.
me. So here's some of my publications. Carl mentioned I wrote Project Management for Humans. I'm blogging at brettharned.com and then over at sameteampartners.com. And we've got podcasts in both of those places. So enough about me. Let's dig in. So this memo from McCann blew up because they basically said, we're changing our business models because clients no longer want us as agency of record. We're going to a project-based model. So we're changing our operating model. That means PMs are now the new account managers. So the idea that project managers could fully replace account managers definitely struck a nerve across the industry. This was positioned really as a bold evolution, but a lot of us have been really doing this for years. Yet for some reason, a company like McCann feels like when they do it, it feels like a big red flag when they're combining roles. So, as your kind of resident PM guy, as Carl has been known to call me, and someone who has worked in and with almost every kind of agency operating model, I definitely had opinions. So I wrote about it. I posted it to LinkedIn, and that post exploded. It got over 202,000 impressions, 140 comments, 38 reshares, and so many DMs. People had things to say. And honestly, that's why we're sitting here today. This one post cracked open a conversation that I realized people really wanted to have. It also has inspired me to keep going on LinkedIn. So if you want to follow me or connect with me there, please do so. I'm posting very regularly. All right, so let's get to it. Handing account managers to PMs. Is that the best idea? So I've been the hybrid account and project manager. I mean, it sounds like it's an efficient role, and it can be a good role. I'm not here to say hybrid is bad, but it's the kind of decision that can really bite you if you don't think it through as a leader in an agency. So we know exactly what McCann was solving for, and that decision stands. It's what a lot of us are doing in smaller project-based shops. So it makes sense that they would do that. Still, it doesn't seem right based on what we know about their size, their culture, their process, and their history. So it kind of makes you think like, is it a good decision? And as much as I love a hot take, I can't say that there's a universal right or wrong here. The reality is that we're all doing this differently. We all operate differently, and we all have good reasons for that. So your team structure is shaped by your business model, the industry you serve, your services, your staff size, your company's maturity. All of it plays into how leaders make these calls. So don't come for me just yet if you're from one of those big shops. I'm not here to tell you what that your model is broken. I'm just here to get you thinking about how you look at
about how
account
you
and
look at
project management roles, what kinds of models actually work, and really what might be worth rethinking. So I'm going to walk you through how I see it, but I fully expect this to turn into a conversation. I wrote a hot take, not a universal truth. I don't know everything, and I'm hoping we have a little time to talk about this. So before we get too deep, let's ground ourselves in what PMs and AMs actually do. Now, I get it. Not every agency defines these roles the same way. There's always going to be nuance. Some of you might hear this and think, that's not how I do it. And that is absolutely fine. What I'm talking about here is higher level industry wide understanding of these roles and what most of us generally accept, even if we've evolved our own versions. So bear with me, we're talking big picture first. And when these roles work well together, it's not about staying in perfect lanes. It's about knowing when to divide and when to kind of back each other up. So this is the line that really stuck with a lot of people when I first wrote the article. PMs keep trains running, AMs make sure the destination still makes sense. Without both, you're just moving fast in the wrong direction. And it's simple, but it hits because this is where so many teams go sideways. PMs are experts at getting things done on time, on budget, with all the right details. And AMs are the experts at making sure that what we're doing still actually matters, that it still serves the client's goals, that we're chasing the right outcomes. This is what we're going to break down next, what account managers actually do, and then what project managers actually do, and why both are essential if you actually want to deliver great work and keep your clients. So managers aren't just relationship people. They're the stewards of the client experience. They build trust, of course, but they also push the work forward by spotting opportunities, bringing creative ideas to the table, and making sure that what you're delivering actually solves the right problems. So great account managers advocate for the client without throwing their team under the bus. That's a critical distinction. Great account managers keep the partnership strong, but they also protect their team from unrealistic asks, scope creep, and the classic, we said yes, but we didn't check with delivery moment. I'm sure that you've all been there. So of course, account managers are key to account growth, client retention, and long-term agency health, but they're not the ones booking stand-ups or chasing assets. That's the PM's job. The AM is playing the long game while the PM is driving the day-to-day delivery. And this is what account managers don't do. So when account managers step into these areas, when they're the ones building project plans, tracking budgets, assigning tasks, they risk stepping on the PM's role. And not just stepping on toes, but confusing the team, duplicating effort, and sometimes quietly taking on responsibilities that stretch them too thin. So just a reminder that clear roles are not red tape. They're not a process for process's sake. They're what keep people from quietly quitting while you're sitting on your Zoom calls. Because when roles get messy, people get annoyed and they disengage, and the work starts to suffer long before anyone speaks up. And that's, to me, that's why this matters. So let's talk about what PMs do. Project managers are not just your Gantt chart jockeys. They're not filling out status reports and chasing down assets. They're not just doing that. They own the delivery machine. The project management job is to take work from concept to completion and make sure that it's on time, on budget, with as little pain as possible. They're the ones keeping the work moving forward, keeping the team aligned, and really just making sure the process doesn't fall apart when things get complicated. So PMs lead the plan, they manage the risks, keep the team resourced, and really protect their people from overload. They own the day-to-day communication that keeps projects on track, and they make sure feedback loops don't spin out of control and that the project actually lands. And what do PMs not do? So PMs aren't the ones building strategic client relationships. They're not leading growth conversations, running wellness check-ins, or tracking account level revenue. They're not thinking about upsells or cross sells, and they're definitely not driving long-term growth roadmaps. So when we expect PMs to carry all of that, we're not helping them to develop. You are pulling them away from what they're great at, and that's delivering exceptional work on time and within a budget. And so this is how you lose your best PMs. When they're asked to do it all, they either burn out or they stop dropping balls because they're spread too thin. So the account manager carries growth, the PM carries delivery. Both matter and both need space to lead because when those lanes are clear, teams definitely thrive, clients feel supported, and the work actually sticks. So let's look at the overlap. On the left is basically what I just said, AM zone. On the right is what PM zone. And this is how most agencies think about these roles when they're at their best. Clear, distinct, but also connected. So let's bring in the actual overlap. So this is where PMs and AMs overlap. They both talk to the client, right? They both build trust. They both solve problems. They both manage escalations, and they both show up in team meetings and client meetings. So what's the difference here? To me, the difference is in why they're doing these things. When PMs communicate with a client, it's about delivery, updates, blockers, assets, approvals. When the AM communicates, it's about strategy, growth, and relationship health. And when they both build trust, the PM earns it through reliability and precision. The AM earns it through partnership and advocacy. They both solve problems, but PMs solve delivery problems and AMs solve relationship and account level problems. So to me, really the key isn't eliminating the overlap. It's owning it together with clarity and purpose so that you're not stepping on each other's toes or leaving gaps. And I think when you get this right, the team works, the projects work, and the client can definitely feel it. So this isn't just about who does what. It's about how people are wired. So AMs and PMs don't just have different responsibilities. Generally, they think, act, and lead differently. AMs tend to live in the big picture thinking. They build connections, they lean into growth, they thrive on fast-paced, people-driven interactions. They're often the ones who can read the room really quickly and talk a client off of ledge on with one well-placed question. PMs, on the other hand, we're wired for structure. PMs see the details, the risks, the dependencies. They get satisfaction from moving the work forward, staying on budget, and hitting the mark. They don't just keep lists, they need lists. So the interesting thing I found out this past week is that David C. Baker, who I'm sure you all are aware of, he studies agencies and leadership. He's collected DISC profile data on thousands of AMs and PMs. He's found that most account managers fall into the I and D profiles, influence and dominance, because they like to lead. They like to build relationships and they like to move fast. And most project managers, apparently they're high C, which is conscientiousness. So they're detail driven, process oriented, focused on accuracy. It's not surprising to hear this, but it's meaningful when you hear it out loud. I think it makes sense, right? Like they're fundamentally different ways of moving through work and through relationships. And when you collapse those roles without thinking about the people in them, you're not just blurring responsibilities, you're ignoring the fact that they're wired differently to work differently. So when we respect those differences, we get to build teams that are balanced, human, and actually sustainable. So this is a quote from Maya Dunkel, who's an account director I had the privilege of working for on a huge pharma account. It was multi-million dollar, high stakes, fast moving, really great account executive. She is looking for a role now. So if anyone's looking for someone, let me know. I'd love to put you in touch with her. But after we worked together, I interviewed Maya for my site because I genuinely respected how she thought about the AM and PM relationship. Maybe because I was the first PM that she ever worked with. Either way, it just felt like she really got it. But let me tell you, the setup on that project was completely unbalanced. I was the only PM, and Maya had a team of four. The work was moving fast, but I, as the PM, wasn't even really allowed in a lot of the client meetings. I only did a status report meeting. I was managing timelines, the scope, the details, but I didn't have a seat at the table to influence expectations, to even know what was happening with the strategy, or to honestly lead proactively the way a PM needs to. And honestly, that started to wear me down. I eventually left that job because I realized I wasn't willing to be the behind the scenes pencil pusher. I didn't want to be the guy keeping trains running, but have zero influence on where those trains were even going. To me, that's not project management, that's task management. And honestly, it felt like a massive wasted opportunity to me. So Maya, she always understood the value of the partnership. She got that PMs and AMs needed to divide and conquer. If they don't, the whole thing kind of falls apart. That's why this quote really sticks with me. It's not just a nice idea, it's actually a hard-earned truth. To me, this is what real partnership looks like. It's two roles, both essential, both bringing something unique, both needed to get the work done right. So I'm making this all sound pretty perfect, right? So why are agencies combining these roles? Let me take a minute to unpack why I feel so strongly about this, because here's my hot take straight from my PM brain and background. Uh, I've been in the big traditional agencies, and in those traditional agencies like McCann, PMs are laser focused on delivery mechanics, timeline, scope management, timesheets, revenue recognition, and reporting. It's really deep operational stuff. And I have to admit, when I worked at the larger agency, I was shocked by how deep some of the PM work went. That's actually part of why I prefer boutique shops. I think you get closer to the work, closer to the people, and the role doesn't get reduced to financial housekeeping. But these big agency PMs, they're often managing huge accounts, sometimes with limited client contact. So now you want to hand them the relationship too? Something about that doesn't make sense. And it makes me think, maybe leadership doesn't trust their account managers to learn the financial work, or maybe the PM role has just gotten so complex that if the few PMs who can manage the work and a relationship feel like a unicorn that's worth betting on for the agency. It's hard to actually say what's better here, but I do know this. Someone is making decisions, and they're going to ride it out for better or worse. And it could break some things. They could lose people. They could lose clients. They could have to adjust their entire process. A lot is dependent on these roles. So, there's no one size fits all reason agencies combine roles. Sometimes it's smart and a necessary choice, especially in smaller shops, but more often it's a quick fix that doesn't fully consider the impact. And here's just some thoughts on why it happens. First is lack of understanding. Often leadership doesn't get what these roles actually do. You'd be amazed how many times I've consulted with an agency and even the owners don't really have full defined roles or expectations of what an account or a project manager should do. Next is necessity. I think small teams, often people have to wear multiple hats. And in an age where being a generalist is really becoming more and more viable, finding the unicorn AM PM hybrid is a great deal. Then there's financial pressure, which I think is probably where McCann seems to be. It's about fewer people, fewer salaries, and it looks efficient on paper. Then there are client demands, right? Clients want faster, leaner teams. I mean, think about it in your history working in agencies. How many times have you heard that a client told the biz dev person they don't want to pay for project management? It's happened to me quite a few times. And then what about technical pressure, right? We all know that AI is coming for us, right? And AI and automation really create a false sense that the work is simpler now. And I don't think we're there yet in agencies. If you are there and you are automating a lot, I would love to hear more. And I know that there are events that the Bureau does for people to spotlight this work. Um, so it feels like we're kind of chasing trends, right? Like some agencies will collapse roles to feel agile and more modern, or honestly, just to use the next best buzzword on their website to attract clients. Um, then there are talent gaps. I have to say, finding someone who can do account and project management well is very difficult. I've hired up a team of 6 people, and I think I fired 3 along the way because they couldn't do it. This past year, I helped a client do the same thing, and we fired someone and found someone new. It's really not an easy job to take on. And sometimes it works. It definitely does work. But often agencies are optimizing without really understanding what keeps clients happy and what keeps teams healthy. And that's really where I think things start to fall apart. So, this new trend of collapsing roles in the name of efficiency is really interesting because, again, many of us in bureau shops have been there. Honestly, in most cases, I've seen shops grow and decide to add account management, not remove it. The problem is removing a role isn't easy work to do. And there's no guarantee that it's going to work unless you already have that hybrid person on staff and a rock solid structure to support them. It usually leads to confusion, burnout, and really uneven client experiences. And here's where I want to be fair. I've worked in account management roles, I've worked in project management roles, and I've been in hybrid roles. In fact, I started as an account director. I handled client strategy, I did sales, I scoped projects, I ran budgets, and I led delivery. And it worked for me because my workload was manageable and I was supported by the owners of that agency. So the structure made it possible. But that doesn't mean that it works for everyone. You know, the success of hybrid roles hinges on a lot. I think it hinges on your personality and capabilities, your experience, your workload, your clients, your team size, and your leadership support. So hybrid absolutely can be great. It can also completely implode if you don't set it up intentionally. And that's what we need to talk about. So this is another article I wrote called The Myth of the Unicorn Employee is Hurting Real Humans. It's about this growing expectation that people should be able to do everything, that they should lead, deliver, strategize, execute, manage, sell. Oh, and by the way, be exceptional at all of it. Does that sound familiar? It does for me. It's exactly what's happening in this AM and PM conversation. So when we collapse roles, when we push for hybrids without thinking it through, we have to ask what's really being asked of this person. It's not just a title shift. It's not just saving a salary. It's the weight of multiple jobs layered on top of one another with the expectation that someone somehow is going to handle it all flawlessly. So let's take a deeper look at where we're actually asking people to carry. So we're asking one person to manage the scope, read the client's mind, keep the projects on track, grow the account, send the calendar invite, and somehow not mess it up. This is and on how many accounts? I think in my article I mentioned that they're talking about these folks handling 15 accounts. That's insanity to me. Um, this is what the hybrid role often looks like when it's created out of panic or out of budget cuts instead of thoughtful design. And this list, it's a job description for two people minimum. It's not just about whether someone can do all of this. It's about whether it's fair to ask them to do it. So when we expect one person to carry all of this and that many accounts, we're not setting them up to grow. We're setting them up to survive. And this is where burnout actually starts. This is where the team frays, this is where the client starts to feel the cracks. So, yes, hybrid can work, but only if we're brutally honest about what we're actually asking one person to hold. And when we get this wrong, when we collapse roles without thinking it through, what's lost isn't just internal efficiency. The cost is bigger. It shows up in the work, in the client relationship, and eventually in your bottom line. You end up losing trust because when people drop balls or can't keep up, clients start to question whether your team has it together in the first place. You lose proactive thinking, right? When someone's buried in task management, they don't have the space to look ahead. They're too busy reacting to what's on fire right now. You also lose strategy because there's no time to step back and ask, is this still the right direction? When you're overloaded, you just keep pushing the work forward, even if it feels like it's going nowhere. Then you lose client retention. When trust erodes, when strategy slips, clients start to look for someone who will give them the attention that they expect. And that's a really important point. And then what about your team? You lose team sanity. This is where burnout lives. When people feel stretched too thin, when they're working outside their skill set, when there's no space to breathe, that's when they quietly check out. So the cost isn't just internal. It hits your delivery, it hits your client relationships, and eventually it definitely hits your revenue. So let's be clear again, this is not an anti-hybrid talk. I'm not here to say hybrid can't work. It can, but only when it's done with intention. So if you're going to run hybrid roles, run them like real roles, not like accidents. That means leadership has to back the role, not just dump a bunch of responsibilities on someone and wish them luck. Priorities have to be clear. What's most important and what happens when something has to give? There has to be a framework, right? Who's accountable for what? And how do you make sure that nothing slips? Workloads need to be balanced. You can't stack an AM's job, a PM's job, and all the team logistics onto one person and expect them to thrive. You have to balance the workload and the amount of projects they take. And most importantly, clients need to understand the setup. If you collapse the roles, but your client still expects two people's worth of attention, you're walking straight into disappointment. So I'll say it one more time. Again, hybrid can work, but it has to be designed, supported, and communicated, or it's just another fast track to burnout. And then let's not forget experience, right? Because I also mentioned in my article that I've heard anecdotally that some agencies are hiring juniors for these roles. But here's what I believe. The hybrid role works best when someone has the knowledge, the experience, the confidence, and the time in the trenches to actually handle everything. So we already know there's a lot to absorb as an AM or a PM on their own. Each role has its own learning curve, its own skills, its own career ladder. Now imagine throwing a junior PM into your biggest project and telling them, yeah, you've got this. Oh, and by the way, you're also responsible for keeping the client happy, mining new business, and playing scope cop all at the same time. That person is going to get railroaded. Not because they don't care, not because they're not talented, but because they don't have the experience yet to do all of that stuff at once. It is a challenge even for someone like me who's been doing it for more than 20 years. This is why I really believe experience is key if you're going to run a hybrid role, or at the very least, a damn good training program or a coach who can help them grow into the role. And by the way, I know a guy. Hello. All right. So this is a quote from the article that really gets to the heart of it. Leading complex projects and navigating client relationships takes experience, emotional intelligence, and the confidence to strike the balance between setting boundaries and demonstrating support. It's not about checking boxes or moving tasks along. It's about being able to lead the work and lead the relationship at the same time under pressure. And that's the tricky part. It's easy to talk about balancing delivery and client happiness. It's much harder to actually do it, especially when you're under-resourced, when things are on fire, when the client's pushing hard, and when you're trying to protect your team. That balance doesn't come from a job title. It comes from a process document. It doesn't come from a process document. I'm sorry. It comes from experience. It comes from time. It comes from getting it wrong and learning from it. That's the best way to learn. And when we combine roles without considering that, we're not just making things more efficient, we're making things more fragile. And that's a big part of what's getting missed in this conversation. So here's the other thing. We talk about unicorns in this conversation. There's rare people who can lead complex projects and manage client relationships and do it all well. They exist. I've been one. And like I said, I've done the hybrid job. I've worn the hats. I've juggled the things. And sometimes it can feel great when the workload is balanced, when the client is awesome, when the team is solid. But here's the thing, unicorns are rare and they're not a business model. So too many agencies burn them out before they realize what they had. They pile on the work, they collapse the role, and they assume, well, this person handled it before, they'll be fine. But no one can carry everything forever. Even unicorns are going to get tired. So you can build a sustainable model, you can build thoughtful roles, but building your entire structure around the hope that you'll find and keep the hybrid PM AM that is really hard to find, that's not strategy, that's gambling. All right, so if hybrid roles can be risky and unicorns can't carry your whole agency, what does work? Let's talk about team structures that actually hold up, models that aren't just wishful thinking, but models that support your people, models that deliver great work and keep your clients happy. There's no perfect answer again, but there are a few tried and true setups that can work if you build them intentionally. So I'm going to break them down. Um, So for smaller boutique studios, hybrid AM PM roles can be great as long as the workload and client are realistic. The client load are realistic. In mid-sized agencies, the PM AM duo tends to hit the sweet spot. There are clear roles, shared leadership, solid alignment. That's kind of that's like the best, I think, scenario for the AM and PM role. In large agencies, you need more structure, especially if you're working in an agency of record model where you're bringing in millions and millions of dollars per year and having to figure out what you're doing with that budget. In that instance, PMs handle delivery, AMs manage the relationship, and often there's a strategy lead that helps to connect the dots across complex client layers. I think here the key is to build the model that fits your size, your clients, and your team, not just what sounds good on paper. So I want to dig a little bit more in detail. In small shops, hybrid roles can absolutely work. But here's the key: the role has to be intentional. It can't be something you just fall into because no one else was available or because leadership said, "Hey, you can do both jobs now. Good luck." In boutique studios, the work is usually less complex. Teams are smaller, leadership is more involved, and client budgets often can't support splitting the roles. That's when the hybrid role can actually thrive, when the workload is scoped realistically, when leadership is actively supporting the role, and when everyone's on the same page about what success actually looks like. But the second the team starts growing, the projects start getting heavier or the client load increases. If you don't check that balance, you'll probably burn people out. So yes, hybrid can definitely work here if you design it on purpose. So again, this is the gold standard that I think most mid-size agencies run. PMs own delivery, AMs own the relationship, but here's the catch. This model only works if the PM and AM regularly communicate and deeply respect each other's lanes. Regular syncs are non-negotiable. I think without them, things are going to get messy fast. Client feedback gets missed, scope changes get lost, and suddenly everyone's pointing fingers because there are issues. So clear handoffs, shared client visibility, and open communication definitely keep this model running smoothly. It's not about staying perfectly in your lane. It's about staying aligned and knowing when to support each other without duplicating the work. So when both roles are empowered and trusted and know exactly what they own, this is where agencies really hit their stride. This is where I've seen AM and PM work best. So large agencies, again, they need structure, they need layers. Without them, work starts to slip, clients get confused, and the whole machine starts to break down. So in this model, the PM manages the delivery teams. They're deep in the weeds, timelines, resourcing, day-to-day execution. And the AM manages the client relationship. They're focused on growth, trust, and keeping the partnership really strong. But here's the difference at this scale. You need a strategy lead or an account director to kind of bridge both sides. Because when you've got complex projects, multiple client layers, and a ton of moving parts or projects, you need someone who's looking at the big picture, translating between the delivery and the relationship teams, and steering the overall strategy. So multi-level projects require multi-level communication and clear approvals. It gets complicated fast. So if you don't have strong leadership alignment and really clear processes, this model falls apart very quickly. It works best, I think, when all roles are supported, connected, and really moving in the same direction. Otherwise, the client experience ends up being fragmented and trust starts to erode. So here's the thing. Even the best models can break. What works at one size with one team in one season of your agency might not hold up when things shift. And when you're making big changes to the team structure, you have to be prepared to break things. You have to be willing to experiment, to try something new, adjust, and sometimes scrap what you thought was the perfect setup. And that's not failure, it's just iteration. So you can build a perfect model on paper and expect it to hold forever. But the truth is, people grow, clients change, businesses evolve. Your team structure has to evolve too. And the key is to break things on purpose, test, learn, and rebuild with intention rather than panic. So let's talk really quick about the danger zone, where models start to break. It's not that hybrid roles are bad. It's that they break when you default to them because it's faster or cheaper. They break when you combine roles but don't just adjust the workload. You can't give one person two jobs and expect them to carry it without support. They break when you don't communicate the change, when your team doesn't know what's expected and your clients don't understand what's happening behind the scenes. They break when you don't provide playbooks, training, or coaching, when you assume people are just going to figure it out. That's the biggest problem that I see. And they definitely break when you assume that the client's not going to notice, because guess what? Clients always notice when things start to slip. And the cost of getting this wrong, it's not just burnout, like I keep saying, it's client churn and it's team attrition. The work suffers, the relationships suffer, and your agency starts to quietly unravel. So now that we've talked through where models work and where they break, let's bring it back to you. What model actually works for your agency and for your clients or your team? Now, there's no perfect answer. I think it depends on your size, your services, your people, and your ability to support the structure that you choose. But I want to break down how you can start figuring that out if you're kind of at this point where you're thinking it through. So there's no universal right answer here. The best team structure for you depends on a few key things. Asking these questions. Are you a boutique studio or a large or global agency? I think your size impacts how much complexity you can handle and how lean your team needs to be. Are your projects tactical or strategic? Are you doing production heavy, quick turn work, or are you guiding multi-year digital transformations or campaigns? Are your clients buying your expertise or are they buying your people? Some clients want process and outcomes. Others want FaceTime partnerships and white glove service. Is your team ready for ambiguity or do they need really clear lanes? Some teams thrive with blurred roles. Others need hard lines to really do their best work. And also, you have to think about your business model, your services, the types of contracts you run, and the maturity of your team. Your structure has to fit your reality, not just what looks good on paper or what's trending in the industry. So when the work is complex, strategic, or high risk, that's when you split the roles. You need clear lanes, dedicated leadership, and focused attention when the stakes are high or the clients are big. When the team's small, scopes are simple, budgets are tight, and you can combine, but only if you do it intentionally with a manageable workload and the right support. Yes, I do keep saying that. This isn't about making the right choice, it's about making a thoughtful choice. So let's pause here, but because this to me is a step that a lot of teams skip. We fall into hybrid roles, blended responsibilities, fuzzy structures because it's faster in the moment. It feels more flexible, it feels more agile. But when we don't document who owns what, when we don't write it down, it stops being a strategy and starts being an accident. So make it a decision, not a default. That means that you've chosen your structure on purpose, right? You've clearly defined who owns the relationship, who owns delivery, who talks to the client about what, who's watching the budget, and who's tracking growth. And when you document it, you actually build accountability, you build clarity, and you build trust inside the team and with your clients because everyone knows exactly who to go to and when. They know who owns the next move. And when you don't document stuff, you get dropped balls, duplicated work, and people quietly asking, wait, was I supposed to do that? Or who is supposed to do that? So again, write it down, be intentional, make it a decision, not a default. That's how you protect your team. And that's how you build something that actually holds up. So really quickly, role mapping is really a process that makes roles crystal clear. It's how you stop the chaos of overlapping responsibilities, drop balls, and confusion. I think when you take the time to map roles, you define who owns what, you clarify who talks to the client about what, you set expectations for who pushes back, who finds new opportunities, and who drives each part of the work. It's not busy work. It's how teams work faster, smoother, and with less stress because when people know their lane, they can actually lead in it. Uh, so, so how do you do it? So again, role clarity isn't red tape, it's survival. If you can't answer who owns strategy, scope, growth, and the day-to-day delivery in under 20 seconds, I think your team's probably already feeling the pain. Keep job descriptions fresh. Define who owns what. Explain it to your team and to your clients. And when things change, update it, realign, and communicate about it. Because clear roles reduce friction, they build trust, and keep your team focused on the work, not on who's doing what. So clear roles are step one, but clear processes are step two. It's not enough to just know who owns what. You have to decide how and when those owners come together. You need to map out when the PM and the AM need to collaborate, where the key handoffs happen, how the team stays synced and looped in. It's not just about who's doing what, it's about when they come together. Without that rhythm, things fall through the cracks. You get misaligned handoffs, mixed messages to the client, and that classic, I thought you already told them moment. So when you design the process, not just the job titles, you're creating shared visibility. You build momentum, trust, and accountability across your team. And that's really what keeps models healthy. So one of the best tools you can use is a RACI chart. I'm sure everyone on this call has heard of a RACI chart, but running a RACI of your process and deciding who does what between account and project management and other leaders in your team can be very helpful. There's a little video there that I created and a little template if you want to grab that. I'll give you a QR code at the end of the presentation. All right, so again, this isn't set it and forget it. When you design your team model, you have to keep working on it. As your team grows, as projects shift, as clients evolve, your structure needs to evolve as well. So train your people, support them, set clear expectations and boundaries, and be ready to adapt when something's not working. You also have to watch for process drift. You know, people will naturally reshape your process over time. It totally happens. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but you need to stay close to it. You have to make sure that changes are intentional and you still are supporting the model that you're actually building. And you have to be open to feedback. The people doing the work are going to tell you when the structure is starting to slip. And if you create space where they feel safe enough to say it, you're going to do well. So again, train, adapt, repeat. That's what sustainable leadership looks like. Almost done here, folks. So the TLDR for restructuring your team is, there's no magic model. There's no perfect org chart that's going to work for everyone on this call. The best structure is the one you chose on purpose. It's the one you map carefully, document clearly, explain fully, and actually support over time. So pick your model intentionally, map your process, document everything, train your team, and adapt as you grow. That's how you're going to build a team that doesn't just move fast, but moves smart. All right, so at the end of the day, it's up to you to take the next step. I like to leave all of my presentations with kind of an actionable takeaway. And again, there's no perfect model waiting for you. There's no magic process that fixes anything overnight if you're struggling with this issue. You have to choose to do this work on purpose. You have to take the next step, whether it's assessing your current model, having tough conversations with your team, or starting to document what's been living in everyone's heads for months or years. And the good news, I'm not leaving you hanging. On the next two slides, I'm going to give you some kind of concrete next steps. So if you're an agency leader, this is where your impact lives. First, define roles on paper. Don't let your structure live in someone's head or in a 5-year-old job description. Write it down and make it clear. Then regularly confirm expectations. Don't assume your team knows what's changed. Check in, realign, especially when projects, teams, or your clients shift. Hire to strengths is a big one. I wouldn't say like go out there and look for the unicorn AM, PM by default. I would hire for what you actually need and hire people who will complement each other, not compete. That can be a real big issue between AM and PM. That's part of where the tension lies. Then you have to pair the AM and PM intentionally, right? The best AM PM partnerships don't just happen. Think about personality, work style, and communication preferences when you're kind of pairing these people together. I've definitely done this with teams and just looking at disc profiles or Enneagram or any of those personality tests can help you to find complementary strengths within your team. If you're running the hybrid role, set that person up for success. Give them support, give them clear priorities, keep their workload reasonable. Don't just dump and disappear. And don't skimp on training and support. This stuff changes fast. Your people need coaching, they need feedback, and they need room to grow. Finally, Make sure that you're doing regular check-ins, not just project check-ins, team health check-ins. Ask them, is this working? Where is there friction? What do you need? How can I better support you? Your structure is only as strong as your ability to support it. All right. And for my AMs and PMs in the room, this is for you. First, know your value, right? Your role matters. You're not interchangeable, you're not filler, and you're not just the person who sends the calendar invite. You bring leadership, clarity, and connection to the work. So own it. Respect others' lanes, right? You don't have to stay in perfect boxes, but you do need to understand what the other person is responsible for and give them some space to lead. Then advocate for your role. If your responsibilities are unclear, speak the hell up. If your workload is unreasonable, say something. You have to protect your ability to do great work. People will respect you for that. Then be open to collaboration. This isn't about territory, it's about partnership. The best PMs and AMs I've worked with had each other's backs. They don't compete, they're connected. Then communicate like your job depends on it, because honestly, sometimes it does. The more you share, the more you sync and clarify with your partner, the stronger you're both going to be and the stronger your team's going to be. And then last one, experiment with AI because she coming, right? Whether it's reporting, scheduling, drafting, or client prep, you better start playing with AI now. It's not going to replace you, but it's going to change how you work, and it's going to necessitate more of the AM PM roles in the future. And that's all I got, folks.
Well,
It
everybody, that's
was.
bring us to the end of our AM/PM harnessing the power discussion. Thanks so much to Brett Harned. Brett, you put a lot of time into this, and I'm so happy for you that that post went viral, and you're starting this conversation in the community and also in the industry. So thank you so much for that, Brett.
Thanks. It's been a lot of fun and I appreciate everyone's time. Thank you.